I'm very proud to announce that we've got Chris Craig here with us in conversation. Chris has done a lot in terms of he's spoken out and called a debate on the 6th of December in the United Reformed Church as an individual, but also he has outreach into the community. He's been here a long time. So here's Chris, and we're going to be talking a bit about the WHS today. So thank you
Yeah,
for coming.
yeah.
How long? So I'll just start and just ask you, what's your connection to Glastonbury?
Well, I've been here for about 40 years, and I originally arrived having moved from London to Somerset. I got involved I was very involved in the peace movement at the time, and I ended up sort of being a peace activist in Knowlesworth, where we were kind of campaigning against the bringing cruise missiles to Britain. And then after that, I was involved in as a traveller going to Stonehenge and getting and my bus was broken up, and I ended up coming to Glastonbury as a refugee in the mid-80s after kind of quite a traumatic period. And so I've been in Glastonbury ever since, and for 30 years I worked as a carpenter here and run my own little business, doing building work and so forth. And then I was kind of really ill and sort of retired from work, and then I kind of really was looking for to what I could do in the community, and the things I got drawn towards were free food, supplying free food, which I helped do at the United Reformed Church and also at St Benedict's Church. We do free food. Then I'm also work as a volunteer coordinator at St Margaret's and Mary Magdalene Chapel of Magdalene, which is like it's a free and open space for people to come and pray, but it's also a historical space, goes back to 1250. And then the third thing I've been putting my energy into is the U3A, which is is a charitable organisation which provides a wide range of educational courses, extremely cheap, to enable people to carry on lifelong learning after they finished at school and college and so forth. So those are my primary. But I've also been kind of very involved in environmental issues. What I felt over the last few years really is that there's a lot of anger and conflict in society. And I felt that rather than campaigning against stuff, I put my energy into campaigning for stuff or actually trying to make stuff happen on the floor.
Yeah.
And so I haven't been so politically engaged in politics in a kind of, but what I felt when I heard that the council was supporting the World Heritage idea was it was such a kind of diversion from what Glastonbury really, really needs.
Yeah.
And I just sort of felt, well, I just sort of felt I needed to sort of, stand up about it, not to criticize the people who are doing it, who I think are well motivated, but to actually point out that there are probably greater needs, and also that perhaps people don't actually consider the pitfalls
Yeah.
that will automatically ensue if we got World Heritage status.
Yeah. So, how did you hear about this proposal in the first place?
Well, funny enough, the first I really heard about it was um, about when Lucky Bandu was kind of appointed mayor. I was invited to a meeting at he was he had a kind of opening at the church, and a friend of mine um, called Mike Smith said to me, "I wanted to introduce you to these two guys." Who he said were kind of working for World Heritage, and he said, um, "I would like to introduce these two chaps. They're trying to kind of help us to get World Heritage status in Glasgow." And I said, "Well, I don't think that's a terribly good idea." He said, "Well, I won't introduce you to them." So that was the first I heard from it, and then a few months later, then I heard that I thought, well, this is just an idea. Then I heard that the council were actually already kind of like pursuing this. And I thought, well, they never asked anybody about it. I only found out about it by chance. What sort of mandate does the council have for pursuing something which, from my knowledge, when I do read the newspaper every day, old fashioned that way, I read the Guardian every day. Um, that a lot of places which have got World Heritage status have been really suffering, and people have been demonstrating locally, um, because they're finding the places which have got the status have become virtually unlivable in.
Yes, yeah. So the impacts on Glastonbury, how would you see that? Would it be like it is in other places in Europe? Say like Barcelona, where they're squirting the tourists and saying, "Go, tourists go home."
Yeah, well, it's not just Barcelona, it's also places like Machu Picchu, which is like a very, um, vulnerable, and wild, place.
Yes.
Um, in a way, we got the Glastonbury tour. I mean, we at the moment we've already had to have concrete paths put up there because there were too many visitors.
Yes.
But I mean, what I foresee, what I fear, is that the number of visitors becomes so great that that the National Trust sort of think, oh, we can't just let everybody into it, and they start to think of putting gates on it. I've seen since I've been in Glastonbury a lot of places that used to be um, open, like Chalice Well, for example, is now quite expensive to go in, because in a way, if it's almost like they you can see why they've done it because there's too many visitors. Now when we run the chapel, in the almshouses, we have a philosophy of that you don't sell spirituality. It's available for everybody. Anybody can come,
Yeah.
and most of the people that come, a lot of the people that come have never been there before, but they kind of really get a strong kind of warm heart feeling from being there. And there's lots of other people who go in there almost every day and meditate or pray in there, and they kind of generate this really lovely energy. So that by keeping it open and keeping it free, and what we've found magically is that by keeping it free, that the people that give us donations and so forth, it's enough to cover all our costs. So it's like it's just a philosophy of and I'd put the philosophy down into a nutshell as you don't sell water by the riverside.
Right.
The riverside, this is the energy of Glastonbury. And it's kind of it's not easy necessarily living here. We all know that it's a bit like living in a magnifying glass, so that, if you're not kind of centered, it can be quite a difficult place to live. But nevertheless, it's a very, very spiritually powerful place, and we it's a privilege to be here because it gives you the opportunity for lots of growth and learning. And what I want to see in the future is that, when the world's in a very difficult and tormented situation with wars and the prospect of ecological breakdown, that people can come to Glastonbury
Yeah.
and they can feel that we've got something going on here which is actually good and better than what's going on in the rest of the world. Although we're not just another um, tourist site, which is kind of trying to make as much money as it can out of the tourists that come in. Now, we've got Bath up the road, and I've spoken to people who live in Bath, and that's a huge place for the tourists with all the stuff to do with the Austins and the Roman baths, and they say that the centre of Bath is virtually if you're a local, they kind of avoid it in the because it's so overcrowded with tourists. And the other aspect of it, which I haven't mentioned so far, but my fear
Yeah.
is that increasingly accommodation that was available for people to rent has become turned into Airbnbs, which means that people um, who live here, who lived here for a year, can't find accommodation. Um, that there'll be more hotels coming in,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and that meanwhile, it's not what's not being addressed is the need for actually affordable social housing for the people that live in the area. And the other thing is that I know a lot of people who lived here for a long time, and almost all of them who've got children, their children have actually had to leave town
Yeah.
because they can't afford to live here because most of the work here is minimum wages, like working in shops and so forth, and that doesn't give you enough income to actually pay the rent.
Yeah.
So
So the rents are very high already, and they reckon that in WHS places they got about 25% on top of that.
that's right. So,
So
I mean,
that will outprice most
so the
of
only
us.
people I think from it would be must be some landlords would benefit from it, and also I could see that some of the the shops might benefit. But to be honest, when you come here in the summer, the Glastonbury is unique amongst all the local towns and not having empty shops.
Sure, exactly.
As we are.
Yeah.
So why try to encourage more tourism when we're actually doing quite well on that level already?
But do you think business rates might go up as a result? Because this is maybe one thing that's happened in Bath. A lot of the independent shops had had to move away or they can't move into Bath. So you get more of the chains. Do you think that might happen?
Well, I think what will happen is, well, it's like we've already got the Premier Inn and Travelodge, coming into town.
Yeah.
But obviously, when we get when if the big companies see there's an opportunity to make money here, that they will come in and they'll gradually push out the smaller uh, people who smaller companies and smaller people who could run their own little businesses will get squeezed out by the big multinational companies because we've already got now Starbucks and not Starbucks, what's it called? Subway,
Costa Coffee.
yeah, and Costa
Yeah.
Coffee and so forth, moving in. And it's getting like, in a way, what's going to end, what I'm worried about is the little town centre is going to get hollowed out and you're going to end up with a kind of retail park around the margins of the town, and a hollowed out centre of the town, which is just there for the kind of like for the tourist trade.
Yeah. Are there any benefits? So you think the only benefits would possibly be for landlords and that kind of thing? Or
Well, I think there could be benefits for landlords in the short term, but then it's a bit like it gets to critical mass where you got people coming in, but nobody can afford to live here to give the people hospitality. So at the moment, there's a lot of people who are doing healing work or teaching, spiritual teaching work, and so forth, who are living quite marginally. But if they can no longer afford to live here, then they won't be serving the people that come here
yeah.
for their teachings or for their healings and whatever. So it becomes a sort of vicious circle um, of the place becoming more and more gentrified. And also, the other thing which you haven't mentioned is that once you get World Heritage status, then there's a kind of level of bureaucracy which dictates how the town develops. Now, what I've seen over the last few years is things like the Frost Fair, the mural project, um, some of the things I don't particularly approve of, like the zombie walk, for example, which is not my cup of tea. But there's all these the gatherings at Beltane and Suwain, all these kind of cross-quarter gatherings, community gatherings, all these things have kind of arisen spontaneously with a lot of hard work from local people who've made these things happen.
Yeah.
And and because that they start off small and gradually grow in an organic way, they've got a unique quality. But once you start to um, have an overall organisation which is sort of saying, "Oh, you can do this, you can't do that," then things can't happen without going up. And would they say, "Oh, we can't have that mural there because it doesn't fit in with what we're trying to make of the town?" So
Yeah.
you lose that organic spontaneity. And in a way, what I'd like to see is Glastonbury being kind of ahead of the curve, and actually doing things in a kind of more spontaneous, creative, and radical way. Not so much top down, but bottom up.
Some art. Yeah.
And you know, what strikes me is a lot of the initiatives that have happened in Glastonbury have been from creative people who've not got um, any sort of economic resources, but they've got they're people with artistic and creative ideas that make things happen, and that's actually lifted the whole town. Because when I came here,
Yeah.
um, there was still kind of Morelands was still just about running. All the local industry that was here is more or less closed down. So when we first came in as alternatives, we were seen as being a threat by the local people who felt we were undermining their local culture. But in fact, most of the same people now who I'm dealing with on a regular basis with the UCA particularly would now recognise that what we've done is actually saved the town from economic decay.
That's a good point. Yeah, exactly. And that's what draws people, isn't it? It's that sort of festival atmosphere. Here, high street. Yeah, that's what people come here for and fall in love with.
Well, I think a lot of people come to Glastonbury because they've heard of the festival and perhaps seen Glastonbury Festival, and they don't necessarily know anything about the actual kind of very important history of the place, in terms of the Abbey and how central that was, and the early Christian stories, but also its connection with Celtic mythology and so forth. And um, what's also great about Glastonbury is just that there are so many people of different faiths have come here and are all kind of cooperating. And when you're getting parts of the world now where there's war between different people of different faiths and religions,
Yeah.
then isn't it wonderful that we can find a place where people are not we're actually learning from each other's spiritual paths. We're not, maybe
It's sort of
taking those from each other. Yeah, but also,
more than that.
we're finding that there's one love which is behind all the faiths.
Yeah.
And isn't that going to be the way? Isn't that what the world needs? And that is, I mean, when people say that Glastonbury is the heart center of the planet, well, maybe that's a myth, but perhaps we could make it a heart center. You know,
Mm.
but I believe that if we bring in too much, put too much emphasis on the commercial, then it'll become another. It'll become a place where people will come to kind of they'll buy a place because it's a good place to make money, rather than they'll be coming here because it- it's a place where they come in for their spiritual growth and for learning, for a school, as a school.
And the consultants are talking about, they're saying we want the right tourists. I don't really know what they quite mean by the right tourists, because I think we're getting quite lovely tourists as it is, and I'm not quite sure what they meant by that with their presentation. So you talked about Machu Picchu and what's happening in other places around the world. So do you know of any other places where it's really hit hard?
No, it was obviously Venice and
Mm.
Barcelona, and I think that. But the last point you made about the rights for tourists also brings up the issue of that traditionally a holy place. If you go to ashrams in India, or you go to a Sikh temple, or you go to a Buddhist place, and us as the church in Glastonbury, part of what we do is looking after people that are poor and needy. And we've got a huge number of people in Glastonbury who are very, very poor,
Yeah.
who are living in sort of like trailers or camping or homeless. And, you know, these are the sort of people that if you want to have a nice kind of, wealthy sort of tourist place that are not wanted.
And yeah.
And surely that's also a measure of what if we're talking about, the heart center in love, that people are coming here because they actually are often outsiders. They get pushed out from other places. They actually feel they get some sort of
Yeah.
welcome here, and people. We got the free food fridge. We got kind of like people that offer free food. So you know, if the place just turns into, will those people be welcomed? Will those people very good getting support? If we are a World Heritage Site, because in my opinion, they'll be just seen as being in the way.
You know, it's very much what characterizes Glastonbury as it is at the moment.
Yeah, and it's, we got, it's. I'm not saying it's easy, because we get a lot of people who come to Glastonbury who are,
Yeah.
you can see they're suffering from mental,
Yeah.
you know, um, distress or emotional distress. But I've seen a lot of people who've come to Glastonbury in mental and emotional distress, and then I've seen them heal and then become, active and positive members of the community.
Yeah.
you know, so,
Good point, yeah.
so, so,
Mm.
so, to me, um, we got to look at Glastonbury, what we've got to offer, and I think that when we're looking at World Heritage Site, people are looking at what we can get.
Yeah.
But it's going to cost so much money to get World Heritage. That money could easily be spent on sort of doing research on how we could get sort of funding for social housing and so forth. Do you know what I mean? It just feels like a waste of money.
Almost up to 1 million, I think it would actually cost.
Yeah. And then also once it's up and running, it's not just the one-off form, funding and going, and then there'll be an annual cost, and there'll be bureaucrats,
Exactly.
because I think in Liverpool they got World Heritage status, and then I think it was because they wanted to build a new football ground, near the dockland. Like they had, so, but the local people who live in Liverpool have been football supporters for generations. It's part of their town, and now the World Heritage Week will say, oh well, so it's pushing out people, the local working people who want, a facility there is getting, it's,
UNESCO have also stripped Liverpool of it.
yeah,
I don't know if you read about that. So it didn't really protect it from development
no,
or building. So the fact that some people are claiming that WHS would protect Glastonbury, I don't know.
well, I haven't seen any evidence of it being of World Heritage, because I mean that seems to be the opposite of what the people living in Venice and the people living
Exactly.
in Barcelona are saying. They're saying that they feel that their way of lives are being made untenable.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
and Machu Picchu, I mean that, apparently there's just so many people going there. It's destroying the place. It's actually dismantling it.
Yeah, yeah. And the amount of rubbish, I read an article last week about the amount of rubbish and trash and
That's it.
everything else. So why should we? I mean, you've talked about it already, Chris, and you did that amazing debate. Where
Yeah.
would you like to talk a little bit about the debate on the 6th of December?
Well,
Because that to me really showed, it really gave people of the town a voice. Yes. Do you feel that the voice of the people was heard and heeded after that, or do you feel like
well,
quite disappointed?
I thought it was kind of in a way. I was very, very pleased with the way the event went, because we had about 100 people turned up, and it was kind of, and what I deliberately did was to invite, two counsellors, and I ended up having three counsellors speaking for the World Heritage Site. So it was an open debate with me and Mike Jones um, speaking against it. So I thought it gave the audience a kind of a really good chance to hear both
Yeah.
sides, so it wasn't, slanted in one direction or the other. And then when we actually asked people to kind of vote at the end of the discussion, I think over 80 people voted that we should just abandon it. About 6 or 7 people voted that we should continue with it, and about half a dozen um, sort of abstained from voting. So really, and then another thing is, when you look at the actual population of the town, which is about 8 or 9,000 people,
Yeah.
when you've had almost 1,500 people filling in um, uh, a petition, I mean that's a kind of, you're getting on for about a fifth of the population
Yeah.
of the town have actually filled in a petition against it, and I don't actually feel that the council are actually responding to the objections that we're making. I don't really, I don't, I can't, I mean, when I've been on the emails, I've actually asked the Green councillors. I voted Green in the last election.
Yeah.
I've actually asked the Green councillors to actually explain the reasons why they're still pursuing it, and nobody's bothered to respond. And I just sort of feel that, in a way, I feel that maybe as a group that they've got this sort of they're standing in solidarity with each other, but I actually sort of don't really feel they've got a leg to stand on in terms of it being a kind of um, we never really heard any decent arguments for it. I mean, the arguments about protecting the land from development is a kind of non-starter because they don't have anything to do with development plans.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you think, I mean, do you think there is a way forward? And they formed this working group now. Do you think there is any way we could stop it now? Or
Well, I mean,
do you think is the best way? If the majority, which is what it seems like, most of the majority don't appear to want it. How could we actually, how can we stop it now?
well, I thought about whether to join the kind of working group or often to join it. Um, but basically, as I say, my primary involvement is trying to make positive things happen rather than just campaign against stuff. So,
Sure, yeah.
and I've got enough groups and things I'm involved with already. But
Yeah.
I guess, that they seem to be struggling to find enough people for the working party. But I think if it would be good if there were people in the working party who were starting from a place of skepticism, that so that might be something that people feel called to do. Um, but the other thing is, how is the idea with politics that you vote somebody into power and then they can do whatever that they want or are they meant to be representing?
Yeah.
Are they meant to be representing us? And what I feel is like I feel kind of short circuited and short changed because I voted for the Greens because I believe in protecting the environment. I believe that the values of commercialism aren't the dominant values, which is what both the Labour Party and the Conservative Party seem to be pushing these days.
Yeah.
And I feel betrayed because it feels to me as like the Green Party are putting commercial consideration and the commercial interests ahead of the needs of the ordinary people. And certainly, if we get kind of like 40% more tourists or 50% more tourists, what's that going to do for the environment? And the road networks and transport connections we got are terrible. I mean, it's very hard to get to the nearest railway station by bus and everything. So you know, um, surely they should put some energy into getting the local transport infrastructure together before they kind of worry about inviting more tourists in.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Okay. You've really touched on most of the points that we've been making in this campaign, and I love your way of articulating things. And as a member of the of Glastonbury, and you've been very much a part of what goes on here. I really value.
Oh, well, thanks for your hard work because I know that you've put loads your life, heart and soul into it. So, good luck with your benefit and everything. But also, people bother to watch this. Um, what I'd say is, if you have any contact with any of the, people who are involved in the council anyway,
Yeah.
please do express, your points of view. Because if surely if they get enough feedback from enough people, eventually they're going to have to listen.
So contact your local councillors in your.
Yeah, and also I do think it's worth writing to the local paper because and it's worth considering the leveller as well, which just gets circulated quite widely because the leveller's very, very good at sort of picking up kind of issues and challenging kind of authority. And what I feel as well is that I've spoken, we tend to be in a circle which is more like the alternative network. So, but I've spoken to a lot of the local people who lived here for generations, and they absolutely think it's a totally stupid idea. And I feel that in a way we need to reach out to the local people so that it could actually make increase our unity
Yeah.
as a community. Um, if we kind of
Come together.
if we come together around something like this as an issue, and I don't want to be part of. I don't want to go to war over this. I want us to kind of be, Glastonbury to be working together and be a harmonious community.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much, Chris.